My body moved, but I was somewhere else, suspended in a haze of shock so dense I couldn't feel my own skin. The world outside Rayhan's house was unchanged. The street was still quiet, the sky still a soft shade of blue, as if nothing had happened. As if the ground beneath me hadn't opened up and swallowed everything I once knew. When I reached my room, I locked the door and collapsed onto the floor. Not the bed. The floor felt closer to where I truly was, low, unseen, broken. The silence screamed. No one knew. No one could know. I didn't cry right away. The tears came hours later, suddenly and violently, like a storm I hadn't prepared for. They poured out in waves of grief, of disbelief, of something I didn't yet have a name for. Shame tried to settle into my chest, but confusion was quicker. How could someone I trusted so deeply destroy me so completely? I thought about telling someone. My sister. My mother. But the words wouldn't form. The moment I pictured their faces, the disbelief, the horror, I shrank into myself. Who would believe me? Worse, who would believe he could do such a thing? Rayhan wasn't just family. He was loved, admired. The good boy of the family, the one who fixed broken taps and helped old aunties with groceries. I could already hear the doubt in their voices. Are you sure? Maybe you misunderstood.
No.
I hadn't misunderstood anything. I remembered every second, every look, every word, every silent moment when he chose to let it happen. Days passed, but I stopped tracking them. I ate only when I had to. I bathed in the dark. I avoided mirrors. I didn't want to see the girl who had been so naive, so trusting. I didn't recognize her anymore. Sleep offered no escape. The same scene played over and over in my dreams. Rayhan's face, blank and distant, as I screamed for help he never gave. I started to wonder if I had imagined it all. My mind, desperate for relief, tried to convince me it wasn't real. But then a scent, a sound, a passing phrase would pull me back into that room, into that moment, and I'd fall apart all over again. I wanted justice. I wanted to scream his name from rooftops. But every time I reached for courage, fear pulled me back down. Fear of judgment, of disbelief, of being labeled instead of believed. So I stayed silent. But silence doesn't heal. It festers. And in that festering, a new feeling began to form, not louder than the pain, not stronger than the fear, but quietly persistent. A flicker. The first spark of something I hadn't felt in days. Anger. Anger didn't arrive with noise. It came quietly, like a breath I hadn't taken in days. But once it was there, it refused to leave. It started small. I stopped flinching at my reflection. I looked myself in the eye, not for long, but long enough to remember I still existed. That I was still here. And maybe that meant I still had choices. I didn't speak to Rayhan again. I blocked his number. Deleted every message, every photo, every memory I could erase. The ones I couldn't, I learned to store them in the back of my mind, where they couldn't cut me every time I blinked. But the hardest part wasn't forgetting him, it was trusting myself again. How could I believe in my own judgment when it had led me straight into the arms of a monster? That question followed me for weeks. But so did the anger. And eventually, the anger grew stronger than the fear. I didn't go to the police, not yet. The thought of telling the whole story to strangers still made my throat close up. But I started writing. Pages and pages. I wrote about that day, that room, the betrayal. I didn't leave out the shame, the self-blame, the hollow ache in my chest. I wrote everything. Not because I was brave, but because the words were the only thing I had control over. In that space, I started to heal. I told one friend. Just one. Her name was Sana. I didn't expect understanding. I only needed someone to hear it without asking questions. She listened. She didn't cry, didn't interrupt. She held my hand when I couldn't hold my own heart together. It wasn't justice, but it was a beginning. Some days, I still woke up gasping, drenched in fear. But other days, I woke up angry, determined. And those days gave me hope. I've started researching my options, therapy, legal help, support groups. I'm not ready to burn his world down yet, but I'm stacking the matches. One day, I might strike them. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever trusted someone who tore you apart, know this. It wasn't your fault. The shame doesn't belong to you. The silence isn't where your story ends. He broke something in me, yes. But he didn't take everything. I'm still here. I still breathe. I still feel. And slowly, I'm becoming someone new, someone fierce. Someone no one will ever silence again. I may never forgive him, but I will never, ever forget. And I will rise. Growing up, my cousin Rayhan was more like an older brother than anything else. He protected me at school, covered for me when I was late coming home, and even brought me chocolates on my birthday when no one else remembered. We didn't just share blood. We shared secrets, inside jokes, and a bond one thought was unbreakable. So when he called me that afternoon, his voice low and casual, I didn't think twice. "Come over if you're free."
"I need to talk," he said.
No urgency, no warning signs, just that calm, familiar tone I'd heard 100 times. I slipped on my sandals and left without informing anyone. It was normal. Rayhan's house was only 15 minutes away, and I often went there without prior notice. I imagined he wanted advice about a girl, or maybe help with something awkward. He always turned to me for that. I felt needed, valued. When I arrived, the front door was slightly ajar. I knocked once, then pushed it open. Laughter floated out from the living room. There, on the worn-out beige couch, sat 3 boys I didn't recognize. Teenagers, maybe early 20s. One of them looked up and gave me a slow, deliberate smile. It made my skin crawl, though I didn't know why at the time. "Hey," I said cautiously, stepping in. "Is Rayhan here?" "Yeah," the same boy replied, gesturing toward the kitchen. "He'll be out in a minute." I nodded and stood by the entrance, unsure whether to wait or leave. Something about the way they looked at me, amused, assessing, made me feel like I'd walked into a room mid-conversation, but I didn't know the subject, and I definitely wasn't supposed to be part of it. Minutes passed. Still no sign of Rayhan. I checked my phone. No messages. "You can sit," another one said, patting the space beside him on the couch. His tone was too friendly, too rehearsed. "I'm fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The atmosphere shifted. Or maybe I just finally noticed it. The door had quietly shut behind me. The windows were covered. The air felt thick, like I had just stepped into the eye of a storm that hadn't started yet. And still, no Rayhan. I took a cautious step backward toward the door. And that's when I saw him, standing at the end of the hallway, silent. Watching. He didn't smile.
Didn't speak.
Just nodded slightly, as if giving permission for something I couldn't yet understand. My stomach dropped. In that moment, I realized something was terribly wrong. And the person I thought would always protect me had just become a stranger. He held my gaze for a moment too long. And then he turned and walked away. I stood frozen, unsure if I should follow or flee. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but my heart clung to something irrational, the hope that this was all a misunderstanding. That Rayhan, the cousin I had trusted my entire life, hadn't just handed me over to strangers with a silent nod. One of the boys stood up. Slowly, deliberately. His movements were casual, but his eyes told another story. Cold, calculating, expectant. "Relax," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "We just want to talk." My breath caught in my throat. I stepped back, but the wall was already there. Too close. Too late. Another one moved to block the door. The third stayed seated, watching like a spectator who'd seen this scene before. My heart began to pound against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. "Where's Rayhan?" I asked, voice trembling. The first boy laughed.
"He's around."
"He knows what's happening." That sentence cracked something inside me. The room seemed to tilt. My vision blurred at the edges. My body knew before my mind could fully accept it. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. And Rayhan, he wasn't just aware of it.
He orchestrated it.
No, I whispered, but they were already moving closer. I tried to push past them, but hands gripped my arms like steel. I screamed, louder than I thought I could, but the windows stayed shut, the door remained blocked, and the walls were deaf. Terror doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in through disbelief, then bursts through your chest when reality becomes undeniable. The moment I saw Rayhan again, leaning casually against the hallway wall, his face empty of emotion, I felt something in me shatter. He didn't say a word.
He didn't stop them.
He didn't even look away. As they pulled me toward the couch, my screams turned to sobs. I pleaded, not just with them, but with him. With the boy who once shared candy with me during family weddings. With a cousin who once swore he'd always protect me. But he had already chosen his silence. And silence, in that moment, was the loudest betrayal. I don't remember every second.
Trauma doesn't work like that.
It blurs and distorts, carving only the most painful details into your memory. The sounds, the pressure, the unbearable weight of helplessness. When it was over, they left me curled up on the floor, breathless and broken. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything, my trust, my safety, my sense of self, had been ripped away in a single, unimaginable hour. And in the silence that followed, I knew one thing for certain. I would never be the same again.